All right, what we have here is 2006 Honda Civic. Check engine light came on. I lost cruise control. I couldn't turn more than 3,500 RPMs, and it was kind of sluggish. It would stutter once in a while. So here's the code we got: P2647. It's a rocker arm oil pressure switch, circuit high voltage. It's a VTec valve. So I did the normal fixes that you would try, and they did not work. So I checked the oil, changed the oil, clean the screen out in the VTec valve, which I'll show you later once we get to that point. I actually unhooked the battery. I cleared the code first and unhooked the battery just so the ECM's completely wiped clean. I've actually had vehicles before where I've cleared a code and something stayed in the ECM and it triggered the code again, but I unhooked the battery and then the code never came back. So I do both when I'm doing something like this where I've had an actual check engine light on. All right, so here's the part number for the replacement part. This is the entire VTec valve with oil pressure sensor, VTec solenoid, whatever you want to call it. And I got it from right on eBay. This is an OEM part off of eBay, okay? It's $157 total. Before we go any further, I'm gonna tell you, do not order an aftermarket or an off-brand VTec valve. I did that. There's actually a new one in the car right now, and the light came right back on. So I spent, I think, like $70 on one from like cars.com or something like that. I replaced it, light came right back on. Now the reason I know 100% it is the VTec valve is because I have a friend that has the same car. It's an 07. We swapped valves, check engine light went out, car ran perfect. So I know 100% that it's not wiring or something else, an oiling issue because they need a certain amount of oil pressure to function. I know it's none of that. I know it's the valve. So that's why I ordered a new one that was OEM. Okay, first step here, we want the wipers up. So, turn the wipers on, shut the key off in the up position. That'll keep the wipers up. All right, first thing, you take these ends up on the rubber, pop this out. All it takes is a little pull. Then you have a washer fluid line underneath here. If you take this, spin it up sideways like that, get to your washer fluid line, there'll be a split. Job. There'll be a split right here. Pull that apart. That's out. Now, you might lose a clip that stays in here and there. You can just slide that back on when you're done. Alright, so now we got that off. So now you look here. I didn't put all the bolts back in because I knew I was going to be taking it right back apart. You have two 12 millimeters here. Two 12 millimeters here. Then you have a 10 millimeter right there. 10 millimeter back in there, 10 millimeter in the middle, 10 millimeter right there, and then right here in the front. That'll take that whole cowl piece off so you have room to get down to your valve in the back there. All right, so all those bolts are out. This whole piece comes out just like that. That opens up access down in the back of the motor here. So you're gonna be looking at passenger side. As you can see, that valve right there looks brand new. That's because it is, but it's no good. So you're gonna have two plugs. Plug right here on the top, and then you see a plug right down there. That blue tip, the blue there, that's a plug. Now, before you can take the bolts off, you have to take this bracket off right here. It's, I believe, 10 millimeter. So there's a bracket right here that bolts to the back of the valve. It goes right here, that hole. So you have two top holes. That's your bracket bolt. Then your bottom hole. So these three hold the valve on. This holds the bracket. So the three main bolts that hold the VTec valve on are 10 millimeter. Top two bolts are easy to get to. You don't need the extension. Just use your 10 millimeter with your ratchet. The bottom bolt, you're going to need a 3 to 4 inch extension to reach. So the bottom bolt, you know, they're a triangle pattern. Bottom bolt, it's easiest to take the extension and the socket, put it on the bolt first. I prefer using a 6-point socket. If you can see that, once you get the socket and extension on there, then put your ratchet on. And just take your ratchet down, put it on, loosen it up. Okay, now we got the 3 bolts out. Because this was just taken off pretty recently, it's gonna come out very easy. It's actually already coming out. Now, when you have a car that's got some miles on it, or this thing hasn't been taken out before, you're gonna probably have to use a little pry bar from the top, even a screwdriver or something, wedge right up against this and up the back of the valve cover here, the head, and just kind of pop it out. And once that rubber comes loose, it'll pop right off there. Here's the screen I was referring to. Sometimes that screen will get dirt or just some buildup, some sludge in there, and that'll actually reduce the flow to the valve, and it could throw a code. I already cleaned that on the original one, so that was not the problem. So now we're just going to do the reverse. Set this down in the same way. Make sure you didn't get any stuff in there. Make sure it's clean. The easiest thing to do is get the top 2 bolts started. When you get the top 2 bolts started, then that bottom one lines up. It's not trying to swing offset like that. Don't tighten one up until you get all 3 in. All right, so all 3 bolts are tightened down. I recommend tightening down with a 1/4 inch and not a 3/8 drive, so you don't over torque them and snap a bolt. They are just 10mm bolts. They do not need to be super tight. Do I know the torque spec? No, because I'm not going to go and put a torque wrench on them. I know that they're tight and it's not going to leak. So plug them 2 plugs back in. You can mount your bracket back up right here. And if you want, necessary, no, but if you want to do it, you can. We're going to put our panels back on now. Same way they came off. Slide that right in there. Line up just like that. Make sure before you tighten this down that you don't have your washer fluid line pinched underneath here. Pull that out, make sure it doesn't get pinched. All right, so now I'll just take a look, make sure you didn't lose any white pins. You can see I'm missing a couple here, so I'm gonna make them even. So I'm gonna be missing one there, and put this one on the end. All right, set it back in sideways like this. Grab your washer line. They just push together. They're just a flare on the end of it. Spin it around. Make sure your ends are lined up and lock into these end pieces. Snap her down in all the way across. Now, if your car does have it, if it hasn't been taken apart yet, there will be a little push pin right here in the middle. This one's shot. It's been in and out a couple times. Push your weather stripping back down on, and that's it. So, all right, so we got no check engine light on the test drive. Make sure you at least get up over 140 degrees on your test drive. Don't just drive it for a minute and think it's good, because you never know. As the oil thins out and you lose a little bit of oil pressure, you might actually have an oil pressure issue. So, but we're up to temperature, no check engine light, check the cruise. So cruise control works right there, it's working perfect. And then we'll drop a gear, make sure it spins over 3,500, drop 2 gears. So there it is, that's pulling hard. Runs 100 times better than it did. Just for reference, this valve lasted over 200,000 miles. So they seem to do all right as long as you keep your oil changed and keep up on the vehicle. So, all right, that's it for this one.